भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। May the God protect us all. May we enjoy the gathering. May we gain strength together. May the discussion be illuminating, and may we not misunderstand each other. Let's pray to the God at three levels: Adi Bhautik, Adhyatmik, and Adidevik levels. Namaste and Hari Om to all. I am Sudhir Pandey. शुभ कार्य की शुरुआत अगर एक अच्छी खबर से हो तो वो ज़्यादा अच्छा है। तो मैं यहाँ पे बोलते सभी लोगों की तरफ से माननीय अमीश त्रिपाठी जी को उनके दाम्पत्य जीवन में बंधने के लिए बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूँ। अमीश जी और शिवानी जी, आपको बहुत बहुत बधाइयाँ। हाँ नहीं मैंने देखा। So, on behalf of the Bhavan and the Friends of India Society International, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to this delightful evening with India's prolific author and foremost storyteller, Shri Amit Tripathi. Amit ji will be discussing with us his latest book, War of Lanka, with us today. It is his fourth book in the Ramchas series. The first three books, they explore the individual journeys of Bhagwan Ram, Devi Sita, and the devil Ravan. The Ramchan series is said to be the second fastest selling book series in the history of Indian publishing. Its launch in the UK is very good news, not only for the Indian community in UK, but also for the other people who were from different nationalities and cultures, who would get a flavor of our Bharati Itihas, the culture, the philosophy, which was eloquently captured by Amish ji in his books. Amish ji is currently in UK-wide tour with his latest release, and we are so glad to be hosting him today. We have with us today people from different Indian communities and the social organizations, and many prominent members from the diaspora, who have all joined to understand Amish ji's perspective on the revered epic of Bharat and our Sanatan Dharma, the Ramayana. But before we dive into this insightful evening, let me give you a brief introduction about our organization, Friends of India Society International UK. FISI was established in UK in April 1976 during the state of emergency in India. During emergency, FISI played a key role in campaigning and creating an international forum for the restoration of democracy in India. As a non-profit international NGO, FISI UK is a formidable voice on all matters related to India. Its ethos and objective are to promote India in the UK, which in turn would help strengthen the social, political, and economical relations between India and UK. FISI also achieves its objectives by engaging in seva for the diaspora when required. We did that during COVID times, and again during the Ukraine crisis, when we joined hands with Seva International. Our volunteers helped students and individuals during those stressful times. This was all done through a dedicated 24/7 helpline. FISI also provides a forum to discuss various issues related to Bharat and help render a better understanding. The discussion today is in line with that objective, and we are extremely delighted to present Amish ji's reimagination of Ramayana and the War of Lanka to all of you. Now we would like to begin with felicitating our guest of honors, Shri Nandakumar ji, Executive Director of the Bhavan Center, and Shri Amit Tripathi ji. Please come on the stage. मैं अपने वरिष्ठ साथी श्री संतोष गुप्ता जी से अनुरोध करूंगा कि वो मंच पर आएं और श्री नंदा जी का सत्कार करें। धन्यवाद संतोष जी। अब मैं अनुरोध करूंगा अपने वरिष्ठ सहयोगी और भूतपूर्व अध्यक्ष श्री भरत शाह जी से कि वे कृपया मंच पर आएं और अमीश त्रिपाठी जी का अभिनंदन करें। So before I invite Shri Nand Kumar ji to grace this evening, I feel privileged to say a few words about him. Dr. Nand Kumar ji originally hails from Battur village in Karnataka. He joined Bharati Vidya Bhavan, Bharati Vidya Kendra as a Sanskrit teacher. He did PhD at the School of Oriental and African Studies, London in the 1970s. And he has been executive director of the Bhavan since 1995. Dr. Nand Kumar or Nanda ji as he popularly known as is a scholar of Sanskrit language and literature and philosophy. He is well respected within the Indian communities for his knowledge of Shastra, Shrutis, Smriti, Puran and Ittihas. Nanda ji is known for his wisdom, knowledge, humility and lifelong service to the Bhavan and as well as to our community. Nanda ji has now been recognized for his years of work in the field of Indian arts and culture with an honorary MBE by King Charles III. The MBE recognizes his services to the teaching, performance and accessibility of Indian classical arts in the UK. So I would like to just say, just giving a slight twist with his permission, Nanda ji, Binu satsang vivek na hoi, Nand kripa binu sulabh na soi. So just aapki kripa se thoda sa quick. And now may I request Nanda ji to please grace the gathering with very right words and enlighten us as we prelude to this wonderful evening.
Thank you, Bhavan. Namaste. May we all see with our eyes what is auspicious. May we all hear with our ears what is auspicious. With healthy body, mind and spirit, may we be able to dedicate ourselves for the cause of humanity. May the celestial beings shower their choicest blessings on us so that we may all develop a sense of sacrifice in our lives. May there be peace, peace and real peace. Om Bhadram Karne Vishnuyama Devaha Bhadram Pashyemakshabhiryajatraha Sthirairangai Estushtuva Gumsastanubhi Vyashema Devahitam Yadayuhu Swasti na Indro Vridhashravah Swasti na Pusha Vishwavedah Swasti na Starksho Arishtanemihi Swasti no Brahaspatir Dadhatu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The world is one family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Hence, friends, let noble thoughts come to us from every side. I am so very grateful to FISI UK for choosing the Bhavan to have this very unique program where we will all be listening to Amish ji. And with regard to his latest book, War of Lanka, Ramayana is one of the most important epics for all of us. In life, we believe Rama, Lakshmana, Bharata, Shatrugna, Sita, more than sometimes we believe in our own family people. That's the kind of impact it has on all of us. Our past generation, thousands and thousands of years, it has molded us to what we are today. And I'm so happy here at the Bhavan, where Mahatma Gandhi visited way back in 1889, the same hall, just same structure, no change, where Gandhiji sat, where you are all seated here for prayer meeting. Today, we have a different kind of prayer, different kind of, jnana, daha will be quenched by the discussion we are going to watch. So I would like to quote 3 different quotations from the Vedas to mention to you how important Vidya is. And Amish is a Vidyanidhi. So I thought today is very essential for me to make these quotations. Nahi jnanena sadrusham pavitramih vidyate. There is nothing in this world which can purify the way jnana purifies an individual, from the Vedas, from the Bhagavad Gita. The second one is sa vidya ya vimuktayet. Real knowledge is that which helps you to free yourself from all bondages. And finally, vidyaya amrutamashmute. Real mukti, real amrutatva can only come from knowledge. We have such a learned person in our Amish, and we are here to listen to him. And the discussion which is going to take place here on this day, I feel so happy that Bhavan is lucky. Thank you all for coming in such a large number. Let's all be part of this wonderful, wonderful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadaji, for these profound thoughts. Now we would now move on to the moment we all have been waiting for, hearing from Amit Tripathi ji as he engages in conversation with one of our colleagues. Most of us know Amit ji because of the spectacular work which he has done as he has produced as an author, but also as the director of Nehru Center, when he has supported and encouraged us in showcasing and promoting India's cultural realm in the UK. Amish ji, as you know, is the fastest selling author in the history of Indian publishing. He has a very interesting journey. In his growing years, he aspired to become a historian, but he didn't see it as a wise option then, career option then. Instead, he ended up graduating in mathematics. Then he did his master's in business administration from the world's prestigious management school in India, IIM Calcutta, and then worked in finance for 14 years before writing his first book of the Shiva trilogy, the Immortals of Melua. This book was published in 2010. The series was such a resounding success, and there was no looking back for Amish ji since then. He has now authored 8 fiction and 2 non-fiction books, and he has been dubbed as J.R. Tolkien of India. Recently, he was also called India's Rick Jordan by the High Commissioner of India, because through his books he has made India's Puranic Itihas accessible in a style and language comprehensible to all. His books have sold more than 6 million copies across the globe and have been translated over 20 Indian and international languages. In addition to being a successful author, he is India's Culture and Education Minister in the UK as the Director of Nehru Center. Amish ji has been listed among the 50 most powerful Indians by India Today magazine in 2019. Forbes India has consistently ranked Amish ji among the top 100 most influential celebrities in India. We have all gathered here today to hear about his much awaited release, The War of Lanka, which is the 4th book in the series, in the Ramchandra series. The War of Lanka, as the name suggests, is a tale of great epic and slaughterous war fought between Bhagwan Ram and the devil Ravan. This book begins where the first 3 books ends. Now, to get into the thought process behind this book, we would now like to play a small video first before we get into the conversation. So can I have the video, please?
As usual, एक और super hit book. Always, I think what happens with an Amish book is that you read it and suddenly you get very desperate. Where is the next one?
Not only is it descriptive, it's imaginative, but it's just sheer brilliance.
I wish that there are many more amongst you that will be inspired by today and this evening, and indeed by Amish Tripathi.
He takes on mythology by the core and really, represents us and presents us in a way that we haven't seen before.
The celebrity author, but one of the most influential voices of our times. It's that kind of a book that could interest my daughter and me at the same time.
Arguably the best-selling Indian author of all time.
You know, I've been going through your new book, Ravan. This is possibly, to my mind, the most fascinating of the books that you've written so far.
What we are seeing today, a publishing phenomenon, nothing less.
Now, Amish is India's first literary pop star.
The writer of the fastest and the second fastest selling book series in Indian publishing history. Readers of all genders, communities and backgrounds, from young to old, have loved his books. Critics have said that his books are backed by tremendous research, deep thought, a rooted pride in India, and a liberal progressive outlook. It's no wonder that his fan following has reached heights unheard of before for an Indian author. 10 best-selling books, 6 million copies sold, and the journey continues. Adding to his already full cap of feathers, Amish became a diplomat in 2019, taking Indian culture to foreign lands as the director of the Nehru Centre in London. He is also Minister Culture at the Indian High Commission to the UK. And now, in a tryst with the camera, Amish has recently made his debut as a TV documentary host in the highly acclaimed Legends of the Ramayana on Discovery TV. There are many more documentaries to follow. Amish, an author, diplomat, TV documentary host, movie producer, and most importantly, a proud Indian.
Let's dive into the conversation with Shri Amit Tripathi ji, and to facilitate that, I would like to call upon my colleague Sweta ji. Amish. Sweta ji was formerly part of the financial and equity research industry, but now devotes her time to Indian causes, research and activities. She is an executive member of the FISI. She leads the social media efforts of the FISI UK, among other things.
Namaste everyone, and thank you Sudhir ji. Namaste Amish ji. First of all, let me congratulate you on your latest release, The War of Lanka, which is the much anticipated fourth installment of the Ramchandra series. This was like the climax that people couldn't wait to get a hold of, given the amazing build-up that you had to that book. So Amish, 10 books, 6.5 million copies, and translated to over 20 languages, speaks volumes about you as an author. To many, your books mirror the Katha tradition of Indian culture. Were you looking to create modern Puranas of sorts when you decided to write your very first book? And would you consider that as a contributing factor to their popularity?
Firstly, thank you. Thank you so much for this very kind introduction. When I started writing, honestly, I forget about thinking that I'm re-looking at our great Puranas. I didn't even think anyone would be interested in reading my books. In fact, most of my school and college friends, when they meet me, they usually ask, "Hey, sach pata actually kisne likha hai? Who's actually written your book?" So I don't know. No signs of being creative when I was young, and I started writing these stories for myself. I didn't really think where it was going to go. I wrote my first 2 books along with my job. The first book mostly on the back seat of my car, actually. In Mumbai, we have this wonderful thing called traffic jams. So there'd be an hour and a half each way, and I used to write on the back seat of my car. And I was actually just writing for myself. I didn't really think where it would go. So one of the things I've always said is, perhaps the best things that can happen to you are those that you do without expectation of any results. Right? As Lord Krishna said in the Bhagavad Gita, karma nivadhikarasthi. Just do your karma, don't think about the fruits of your karma. And if you're actually doing something which means so much to you, that you don't really care, or rather you're detached from whether it succeeds or fails, you end up enjoying that journey itself so much that you just want to spend more and more time doing that. That's honestly what I was doing. I wasn't really thinking I'm going to read, who the hell am I to think of rewriting anything? I was just following what came to me.
Amazing. We are so happy that you decided to take that plunge, because we are deeply rooted to our kathas and stories. And now
I'm so happy that all of you decided to support that plunge. I'll have to go back to banking.
No, actually your books have made them so trendy now, so you know. Now coming to Ramchandra series, why did you decide to write a book centered around Ramayana? And in fact, you've done this wonderful documentary series which we just saw, tracing the journey that Sri Ram, Sita and Lakshman took in exile before returning to Ayodhya, which by the way, I would urge everyone to see if you haven't already. So when you go to India next time, keep that as part of your to-do list. So if you could share some insights from there as to why do you think Ramayana continues to have that appeal in the Indian consciousness?
Very good question. You know, India is the only pre-Bronze Age culture that is still alive. The only one. Every other pre-Bronze Age culture, every other civilization that began its path with us, you know, Pharaonic Egypt, Gilgamesh, Mesopotamia, these are all dead now. They're museum pieces, sadly. We're still around. We're still chanting hymns that were composed 7,000, 8,000 years ago. Part of it is our attachment to our stories. There are various things that make up a culture, various things that make us want to remain connected. Could be you know, the way we interact with each other, the stories that we enjoy, the food that we eat. But it's what those stories mean to us and animate how we live. That's what makes them so critical. If a story is just a story, if it's not teaching you something, it doesn't last. There's this wonderful line I'd heard that no Indian hears the Ramayana for the first time. We are born with it. It's a part of our bones. But every Indian hears different versions of the Ramayana, even though we haven't heard it for the first time. It depends on the region that you're from, right? So, I love doing pop quizzes. So if, show of hands, how many of you believe that, everyone knows what the Lakshman Rekha is? Yeah. Most people know? Yeah? Is it there in the Ramayana, Lakshman Rekha? No. Yeah? Oh yeah, okay, show of hands. Who all are saying that is there? Okay, good number. Okay, hands down, who all are saying that Lakshman Rekha is not there in the Ramayana? Oh, good number, I'm impressed. Okay, the thing is this, and for those who are not Indian, who are confused what Lakshman Rekha is,
We'll get to that.
because they didn't raise their hands either time, because their question is, what is a Lakshman Rekha? Lord Lakshman is one of the characters. Rekha literally means a line. Long story short, it's believed that when Lord Lakshman was going to help, when he thought Lord Ram was in distress, he had drawn this line and told Goddess Sita to stay behind that line, and then she'll say safe. And the quote-unquote demon Bhavan came outside. He somehow tricked her into stepping out of that line, and then he kidnapped her. And this actually has a resonance in today's day as well. Many people are, even modern politics, they keep using the term Lakshman Rekha, stay behind your Lakshman Rekha. The news is that in the original Valmiki Ramayana, there is no Lakshman Rekha. And this tells you how, even though all of us know the Ramayana, all of us see Lord Ram and the Ramayana from our own different ways. There are various different versions of the Ramayana. So, in most of the versions of the Ramayana, Lord Ram killed Ravan. But I guess you guys can get a sense of the pop quizzes I'm showing. So, there is a version of the Ramayana in which Sita Ma killed Ravan. It's called the Adbhut Ramayana. All the women should applaud for that. It's a very feminist version of the Ramayana. It's a very ancient version. There's a Jain version of the Ramayana. How many Jains here? Shout out loudly. Yeah? Okay, just 2, 3, okay. In the Jain version of the Ramayana, Lord Ram is completely non-violent. Very obviously. Yeah? For those who don't know, Jainism is an Indian religion in which it's one of its core tenets. There is complete non-violence, no matter what. Even if someone is attacking you, you cannot fight back. Right? So in that version of the Ramayana, Lord Ram is non-violent. This is very different from the others that we are told, because Lord Ram believes, that he will not fight when it's adharma, but when he has to fight, he will fight. Right? What does this mean? All of us have our own versions of the Ramayana. Why do we have that? Because all of us are trying to learn something from the Ramayana. For thousands of years, our ancestors have been doing it, we have been doing it, and our descendants will keep doing it. And as long as we keep hearing the Ramayana, Indian culture will remain alive.
Very good. Now, I actually have a question related to that. So, one of the debates that we often get entangled with is whether Ramayana, our epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata, are they itihas or mythology, which is akin to fabricated tales. So, what is your view regarding that? And given that you said that there are so many versions of Ramayana, do you think they complicate things? Because, as per history, there can be only one fact. Now, there are so many versions of Ramayana.
You can have common facts, but you have different truths. I can lay a bet on this. We are all in the same event right now together, okay? A year later, almost every single one of us will have a different recollection of this same event. Then what is the truth? And one of the things that our ancestors used to say is that all of us have our own version of the truth. Facts are the same, right? But all of us have our own version of the truth. So for example, I am in the UK. For the British, Winston Churchill is a hero. Same set of facts. For Indians, not so much, right? And again, same set of facts. And in the Indian mind, since we are comfortable with multiple truths, I can still believe that for me, I don't think Winston Churchill was a good man, but I can respect the right of a British guy to think differently. Because for the UK, he was good, right? Again, same set of facts, two different truths. So then the question isn't that whether it's true or not. The question is, do I think those incidents happened? Or something which is the core of the story, which then may have got embellished in different points. Yes, I think it did. It's just that we as a culture have not researched it enough, so we don't have proof of it. So, how many of you have read Iliad? Or more like, good number. Or more likely seen the movie Troy? Yeah? Okay. Everyone has seen Troy, right? Yeah. Especially Brad Pitt. Sorry?
Because of Brad Pitt.
because of that. So Troy is based on this ancient text called Iliad, which had been written by Homer. And for many centuries it was believed that actually it was mythology. And then around 150 years ago, 100 years ago, it was tested, researched, there was archaeological finds, they actually found a city which could have been Troy, and now many historians believe that maybe those events did happen. Things could have been added onto it, right? So, could it be that, Ulysses was sailing on a ship and there were sirens who were demons in the guise of women who were singing to their doom? That's unlikely, okay? But did a war like the Trojan War actually happen? Most historians are saying perhaps yes. Could it be that what we think of as the core story of the Ramayana did happen? Right? I think it is possible. We just haven't researched it enough. There are things in there which can be tested, and some of those things we actually explore in that documentary that was mentioned, the Ramayana documentary. So, for example, in the Valmiki Ramayana, Maharishi Valmiki speaks of an underground river in Chitrakoot. How many have read of that in Valmiki? There's this talk of an underground river, right? Now, tell me honestly, genuinely honestly, when you read of it or heard of it the first time, did you actually believe it? Yeah. Really? Okay, I'll be honest, I was like, underground river, come on, okay? Boss, we went to Chitrakoot, we actually found that underground river, okay? And we shot in there, and it was Discovery, so it was a well-funded documentary. So they'd actually got a geologist who came and explained that where this water comes from, where it's probably flowing, and it was a cavern, but it was kind of claustrophobic, but we actually shot out there, right? So things like this perhaps need to be researched. Could there have been some embellishments? Of course. But could the true actual events have happened? I think very likely. I think it should be researched. And now we have enough money. We are a richer economy now. We should research.
No, definitely. It just points to the fact that we as Indians need to take more control of our historical narratives. Now, Amish, you mentioned there are so many versions.
Control is a very strong word. How about if we look at it with respect? And try and actually find the truth. No, there's this guy, sorry to cut it, there's this historian called Graham Hancock who'd come out with this series in Netflix. Anyone has seen that? Graham Hancock, the historian. So he'd written this book called The Underworld many decades ago, and I remember reading about that. And he had spoken of Chola kings writing something on copper plates which were put on their temples, which he used as proof to show that maybe there was a very ancient civilization of ancient Tamil Nadu and of Gujarat and Maharashtra, which was drowned out when the sea levels rose. So Graham Hancock wrote this in his book, and he said that this evidence was there. It was found by modern historians. Why did they not study this further? And Graham Hancock just said that those historians just said it was an Indian king. They must have been lying. Okay. And Graham Hancock put this line, let us make a shocking assumption. Maybe an Indian king actually spoke the truth. And let us research it. Yeah. There could be things in there which are true. We need to just treat it with respect and research it and study it.
Concerted effort, will that be a better word? Okay. So you talked about so many different versions. Now when we read your series, there are so many different things that come up which are not popularly known. Like Ravana having a fight with Dashrath in the very first book, or this very interesting character Vedavati that Ravana loved and revered.
Don't give away spoilers.
Yeah, no. That
I'm assuming everyone's going to read the book. For those who haven't.
These are from your previous series, not from War of Lanka.
How many have read War of Lanka? Shame on the rest of you. But you picked up the book now, so read it.
Yes. That's why they've also
no spoilers.
No spoilers. So which version of Ramayana were they based on?
So the version of the Ramayana that most Indians think is the Ramayana is actually a 1980s television serial. I'm not deriding that television serial was very good. It actually played a role. Thank God it was made. But the television serial did not necessarily follow all the ancient texts. Right? So which is why for many Indians, even Valmiki Ramayana will have things which surprise them, which is the original Ramayana. But there are many other versions of the Ramayana. So the part that you spoke of Ravan and Lord Dashrath fighting a battle close to the sea is actually there in an ancient version of the Ramayana called the Ananda Ramayana, which is also credited to Valmiki ji. So I've been inspired by that version and I put that warrior out there. Sita Ma as a warrior is there, as I said earlier, in a version of the Ramayana called the Adbhut Ramayana, which is also credited to Valmiki ji. There are parts of the conversation between Ravan and Lord Ram which are inspired by Kamba Ramayana. How many Tamilians out here? I assume good number. You would have heard of the Kamba Ramayana. It was among the first of the devotional versions of the Ramayana. I think nearly 1,000, more than 1,000 years old. So some parts have been, inspired from there. So actually, I draw from various versions.
Right. And why did you choose to tell the series through the lives of Sri Ram, Sita, and Ravan, when traditionally Valmiki and Tulsidas had opted to tell this ancient epic only through the life journey of Sri Ram? Because Valmiki's Ramayana starts with this quest from Naraji, saying, when they're looking for an ideal man for the society. But the way you have approached this is quite unconventional.
Yeah, how many can translate the word Ramayana? What does it mean?
It's the path of Ram.
Yeah, the journey of Ram. It literally translates as the journey of Ram. So the traditional Ramayana for us has always been from Lord Ram's perspective, his narrative. And most other characters come in as characters in his narrative. And the thing that struck me is a story actually moves forward on the shoulders of the primary characters of that story. Right? And every character has their own narrative. And we just spoke of different truths. You can have the same incident and different characters will see and interpret it differently. Right? Perspectives differ. There's this Japanese movie called Rashomon. I wonder how many have you seen that? Yeah, so those of you who haven't seen it, it's this Japanese filmmaker called Akira Kurosawa, and there's a term called the Rashomon effect, where actually you see the same story from different characters, and first time you're convinced that the first character is right. Then the second time the second version, you're convinced the second character is right. And by the time it comes to the third version, you're thoroughly confused. You don't know who's right. So I thought that how about if we actually understand the journeys of the three main characters and why they make the choices they make, why they are who they are. It is Lord Ram, Goddess Sita and Ravan. So the first three books are in that narrative. Ram, son of Ikshvaku, from his birth to the kidnapping of Goddess Sita. Sita, warrior of Mithila, from her birth to her kidnapping, and Ravan, enemy of Aravarta, from his birth to the time he kidnaps Goddess Sita. So all three are a parallel narrative, end at the same point, the kidnapping of Goddess Sita. War of Lanka is a common kind of narrative onwards. It's a little complicated, but my readers like complicated. They're smart, my readers.
No, it's extremely descriptive, and I just finished reading it and I was quite mesmerized by it, by the kind of detailed work that Amish has done. So I'm sure you'll not be disappointed at all. So Amish, you just talked about different characters' perspective, and you've tried to bring in their characters because in traditional Ramayana it's primarily focused on Lord Ram. So if I come to Ravan, when we read your books, we get a very different image of Ravan, which is not evil as we typically imagine him to be. Why is that? And now that you've researched enough, how do you view Asuras and Danavs, and what do the people of Sri Lanka think of Ravan?
Many questions in there. Okay, let's answer this way. What our ancient language was Sanskrit, right, for Indians? Yeah. Is there a translation for the English word evil in Sanskrit? In Vedic Sanskrit, not classical Sanskrit. Vedic Sanskrit, in ancient Sanskrit. Is there a word for that? Adharma is not evil. Huh? Dushta is not really evil. It's Dushta. I'll come to Danav in some time. I'll come to Asur also in some time. It's not evil. Okay. Sorry? Daitya. I'll come to that also in some time. Those are actually names of groups of people. Daith, Danav and Asura, those are groups of people. Shaitan is not an Indian word. Okay, but coming back. Okay, cutting this. There is actually no translation for the English word evil. Just like there is no translation for the English word blasphemy. Everyone knows what blasphemy means? Yeah, when you insult God, it's supposed to be a very bad thing. Or there is no translation for the English word blasphemy in Vedic Sanskrit. There is no translation for the English word potato either. Okay, in Vedic Sanskrit. There's a reason for this. If the concept doesn't exist, you don't have a word for it. Potatoes didn't exist in ancient India, so they didn't have a word for it. They didn't have this concept of blasphemy, so they didn't have a word for it. They didn't have this concept of evil, so they didn't have a word for it, actually. Daitya, Dana, Vasura. Let me answer that. What does in Sanskrit, you know, Bharat means descendant of Bharat, right? Or Saumitra means descendant of Subhitra, correct? So Daitya means descendant of Diti, correct? And Aditya is the descendant of Aditi. Who are Diti and Aditi, the wives of Rishi Kashyap? Both of them are the wives of Maharishi Kashyap. So the Daityas and the Adityas were actually step siblings. Okay? Danav, okay? They were also descended from Rishi Kashyap. Asuras as well. So actually, if you look in our Vedic things, there wasn't this concept that Asuras are green-skinned with horns. That's in Amarchita Katha comics. That's actually not how it is described in the Vedas. Right? How many have heard of Prahlad? Who? Narasimha Avatar. Who was Prahlad the son of? Exactly, who was an Asura? Right? And did Lord Indra do things? Lord Indra was a Deva, right? Did he do things which you could call doubtful? He did things on which we could possibly say, maybe you shouldn't have done that, right? But he was a Deva, right? Our ancestors were actually very nuanced in the way they looked at things. There was no simplistic black and white. There were always shades of grey. So even Ravan was actually shown in a very nuanced light in the ancient versions of the Ramayana. And of course he had faults, right? He had, as I've said often, severe anger management issues. Okay? And of course he had a massive ego. I mean, ego beyond measure. But he had talents too. He was, he was a master of the Vedas. He composed hymns to Lord Shiva. Both Lord Ram and Ravan were both devotees of Lord Shiva. How many know the Tandav Stotra? Yeah? And any Shiva worshipper, we chant it, correct? If you see the trailer of my first book, Immortals of Meluha, I didn't have much money at that time, I invested my own money, so it's a very simple trailer. But the music in it is rocking. It was made by Tawfiq Qureshi ji. The chants at the back, in the background, are actually Tanda Stotra. Ravan composed Tanda Stotra. It's one of the most inspiring hymns to Lord Shiva. So there are a lot of strengths that he had. He was a scholar, he was an inventor, he was a musician, he was a good administrator, that's why it was Soniki Lanka. But he had massive faults as well. And that's where our ancestors saw things, that there are nuances. And then you don't judge, you learn. Again, pop quiz, Vedic Sanskrit, is there a translation for the English word judgment, where you are wrong, you will right, you will go to heaven, you will go to hell? Is there a word for that? Again, Nyaya is not judgment. No, there isn't, because actually they didn't have that concept. Right? No one will judge you. You will have the impact of your own karma. Right? So therefore, when you look at others, don't judge, learn, and apply in your own life. It's a waste of time judging someone else. Right? So from Ravan we can learn something. From Lord Ram we can learn a lot more. From Goddess Sita we can learn a lot. So we learn from everyone. That's the way to look at Ravan. But this thing that he was this pure, demented demon, No, that's not the way our ancestors looked at it.
Very, very interesting and very profound, I must say. Amishi, also coming to Sita's character, like you mentioned, you have portrayed her as a very brave and courageous person, and that is quite empowering for a lot of us. But there are other fictional retellings of Ramayana where they try to paint it as a tragic love story, and they show Sita as a meek and submissive character who has been wronged. So what do you think of this? And is there a line of creative liberty, and how should we as readers think about this?
I'd love to say I came up with this concept of looking at Goddess Sita in a feminist strong light because it makes me sound very cool, but it won't be the truth actually. Because our ancient versions, she was a very strong character, including in the Valmiki Ramayana. She wasn't a warrior, but she was a very strong character. In the Adbhut Ramayana, she was a warrior. Like I said, she's the one who killed. There were two Ravans in the Adbhut Ramayana. The more powerful Ravan was the elder Ravan, who was killed by Goddess Sita. So our ancient versions did have this. And it's not just in Goddess Sita. Our oldest scripture is the Rig Veda, right? Yeah? How many have read the Rig Veda? Sorry? Oh, fantastic. Very impressed. There are, as you know, the Rig Veda is our most ancient scripture. It has 10 mandals. It has various hymns written by rishis, and rishis are the equivalents of prophets and messiahs. But it also has hymns written by rishikas, by women rishis. We had women prophets and messiahs in ancient India. If you know any friend or anyone whose name is Indrani or Gargi or Maitreyi, is anyone with those names out here? Or you know people? Yeah? Yeah, those are names of rishikas, okay? Of whose hymns are in the Vedas and the Upanishads, okay? We had women. How many Gujaratis out here? Yeah? Have you heard of the Vallabhi University? It was an ancient university. It was destroyed in the invasions. Yeah? How many have heard of it? Yeah? Who founded, do you know who founded that university? It's obvious, I mean, the answer is coming. It's a woman. Okay? A woman founded that university. Okay? The Vallabhi University. We had women who ruled in their own name. This was what ancient India was actually like. We've forgotten a lot of it in the last few centuries for various reasons. So actually I'm not doing anything new. I'm just harking back to what we were like in ancient times.
Very good. Amishi, so War of Lanka. When do you think the War of Lanka actually happened? What does your research say?
Good one. Unfortunately, I'm not a scholar, so I can just tell you what I found. How many have been to Lanka? Yeah, Sri Lanka. There's this place in the northern parts of the mountains called Sigiriya. Anyone's been there? Yeah. So many of the locals actually believe Sigiriya was Ravan's ancient capital, right? And there are many of the names in there kind of give clues about Sita or about Ram. There's a temple close by, Sita Amman temple, where it's believed Sita Ma was held captive. So there are places out there which kind of correspond. Is that the truth? I don't know, right? Again, scholars and researchers need to do this, need to research this. There was a time when India didn't have money to do this research. Now we do. We should invest in researching and finding out.
Actually, one of the interesting things that I came across was, Ramanand Sagar's Ramayana, when it was aired again recently, 33 years later. It set a world record of highest viewership at 77 million. And it surpassed that of Game of Thrones, which was at 19 million. So recently when I went to Croatia, they actually...
Just to put it in perspective for those who are not Indian, okay? Ramayana, it was re-telecast, okay? The original was in the late 1980s. And even in those days, the special effects weren't that good. Okay? And that same series was re-telecast during the COVID times, and it still got a higher viewership than Game of Thrones did worldwide. Indians love the Ramayana.
Exactly. Indians love the Ramayana. So, in Croatia, they have this big thing about Game of Thrones. They will actually take you on a tour because it's a big thing for them. And I believe in Sri Lanka, there is an 8 to 10 day of Ramayana trail. What about India? Do you think India has been able to tap on that potential given the...
No, man. And in fact, the trade within India itself, I'm telling you, I just told you we went to Chitrakoot and we shot in that underground river. We went to various places which are actually connected to the Ramayana. And in Chitrakoot, I got speaking to a yogi who was sitting out there, who was in the cave, okay? And because we were shooting out there, I was feeling claustrophobic. This yogi was just sitting inside doing, dhyan. I was like, okay. And then after the shoot, I started talking to him, and he said, this is the first time I've seen, TV cameras in here. And can you imagine how sad that is? That's Chitrakoot. Lord Ram, Goddess Sita, and Lord Lakshman spent 11 years out there. How many have been to Hampi in Karnataka? Any Karnatakas out there? Yeah? Hampi? Do you know that, how many know that actually that was where Lord Hanuman was born? Yeah? Some know? Okay, so there's a temple out there. Now, how many Indians actually know and go out there? So even within India, how much do we know of our own... and it's not just the Ramayana, across here. Across Mahabharata, across our own, traditions, our own various kings and empires, we are in many ways a culture that is a little unmoored. We need to reconnect.
Absolutely, I think we need more awareness, and your documentary is a step in the right direction. So hopefully,
Thank you. It is available on Discovery Plus in India, and this is called a soft marketing push.
So Amishi, last question to you before we move on to audience question and answer session. So Sri Ram as a stickler for rules, or Sri Krishna who directed us to do everything humanly possible for the sake of dharma? Who would be a more relevant Vishnu for today's times according to you?
You're really trying to get me into trouble. One of the things again our ancestors told us is that there is no one set of rules or principles that apply for all time. Every set of rules and principles have an era and a place for application. So, if your enemy is someone like Ravan, then perhaps you can be like Lord Ram. If your enemy is someone of a different nature, then perhaps you need to be like Lord Krishna. Right? And one of the things our ancestors used to say, there's this concept called Viveka. How many men have the name Vivek? Eh? Do you know what your name means? What does Vivek mean? Wisdom. But it's a little more nuanced. Okay? Wisdom of... Sorry? Correct. Nandaji, you have the answer always. Wisdom of discrimination, and not discrimination in a negative sense, but understanding the situation. Okay? Understanding where you are, and therefore what you need to do. And one of the things our ancestors used to say, this is the most important skill to learn. Right? So if you have a rule of, that non-violence is good, ahimsa paramo dharma, right? That non-violence is the greatest dharma. It makes sense for all of us as ordinary citizens. But if you are a soldier, then you're supposed to have the viveka to understand you can't follow ahimsa paramo dharma. Dharma hinsa tathaicha. That violence in the cause of something good is okay. Right? So you have to have the wisdom to understand what situation requires what. And this is among the greatest skills to learn. It's very difficult to have this one set of rules which will last for all time. Life doesn't really work that way. Life is complicated. It has shades of grey. You need to be able to distinguish where you are and then react accordingly. So therefore, I'm kind of not answering your question, but actually I kind of am, because it depends what situation you're in, whether you should be like Lord Ram or Lord Krishna or Lord Shiva.
Just Hare Rama, Hare Krishna. So on that very candid thought, we would open the floor for questions. Just a few ground rules. If you have any question, please raise your hand and we'll get to you. And when you get the microphone, please tell us your name and then the question. Just a sincere request to keep your question as brief as possible, preferably to 30 seconds, as Anand Ranganathan often says. And yes, please refrain from making big statements. I'm sure we all have lots of good words for Amish, and he deserves all of that and more. But let's get to the question directly. We want to address as many questions as we can, so please be sensitive to that. So with that, let's begin. Yes, Ashwini ji has the first question.
I'm not going to make it very long. I'm quite impressed with all your books. All I wanted to understand is how do you start doing the research? Where does the concept come from? So how do you get this concept, those ideas, and then start doing the research?
Okay, I've actually, in a way, been doing research for these books for my entire life. So I don't do research to write a book. I just do research because I like doing it. So I read a lot. I read at least 5-6 books per month. I was lucky to be born into a deeply religious family. My grandfather was a Pandit at Vishwanath Ji at Kashi. He was a teacher. My grandfather from my father's side. And my grandmother from my mother's side was also a teacher and a principal in school. So the family had an atmosphere of reading, of obsession with knowledge. And as we used to always joke that Goddess Saraswati put a lot of blessings on us, but Goddess Lakshmi used to stay away. And now Goddess Lakshmi is a little more kind, but perhaps Goddess Saraswati is not as kind as much. As compared to how much our grandparents knew, we don't know that much, sadly. But I've learned a lot from my family, and I read a lot. And I travel, and when I travel, I like to, talk to locals and try and learn. I mean, traveling is actually one of the best ways to learn. But when you do, don't travel in a bubble. Engage with the locals, try and learn a few local words, hear their stories. You'll actually just grow as a person. That's how I do my research.
Hello, Mystery. I'm Riyanka. Big fan. Maybe a little personal, but I have seen you at the alumni of I Am Kolkata. And being a Bengali, I just want to know if anything Bengali culture that influenced you. We have a great poet, Michael Madhusudhan Dattu, who have a profound thing on, especially the Ravan and Meghnad character. We have been influenced in your childhood. Anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, Michael Madhusudhan Dutt, firstly, of course, I completely enjoyed my time in Calcutta, and I'm still deeply addicted to Mishti Doi, which is a problem for me because then I tend to put on weight quite quickly. Michael Madhusudhan Dutt, those who haven't read it, had written this book on Meghnad, who was the son of Ravan, and who was a brave warrior, a brilliant scholar, and he did have many of the faults that Ravan had. But, and that's the complexities of Indian epics. So Meghnad was a bit like, say, Karna, on, that an attachment to his father, which led him to do actions which he would normally not have done. Right? And I think Michael Madhusudhan explores that in a very sympathetic and interesting way. And that's the entire point of the Indian way. We look at all sides and we try and learn from everyone. And we must not forget that. That is the Indian way. There is this, unfortunately in modern India, particularly in these TV debates, we have imported a lot of this American TV style, this gladiatorial, two sides just kind of putting zingers at each other and, shouting more than listening. Right? That's not the Indian way, man. And we tend to look at all sides and try and learn. We must keep that alive. That's what truly makes us special.
Do you think Meghnad will be your next topic?
Sorry. The next question. There is this lady in front. Let's give some young people a chance.
I just finished it.
Yeah. She's been raising her hand. Okay. I don't know. I think you're quite audible.
Perfect. So, having read all your books, I was wondering that is there any character, any portrayal of a character that you would change? I know that many authors use your book on a different path. So when you read these books back, do you wish that you could have portrayed characters in a different manner? Does it change your perspective of the characters themselves, or how do you perceive these going back and reading your own works?
Okay, very good question. Are you a writer?
I actually do, yes, I do write.
Okay, all right. So it is, so yeah, I'm not surprised by the question.
I'm also a lawyer, so I think that's
Also a lawyer. I'd like to read the affidavits you put up. For me, my stories, and I've said this often before, I genuinely don't feel that I create my stories. Because even today, even after 10 books, I still can't explain where they come from. And I've said this often, I know it might sound strange, but I open the laptop and there's this parallel universe which opens up. I can actually see it. I can actually hear them. I can feel their emotions. And I record what I see. So, nowhere does it strike me that I could change this a particular character, because I don't have the power to. I'm actually watching a parallel universe, and I've just been given the privilege of entering and recording what I see. So I have to kind of treat it with that respect. That's how it works for me. I don't know if that makes sense, but
I think sometimes when we're writing, that flow is just coming from somewhere else.
Exactly. And the ancient Greece, most of the ancient cultures, Indians like to think we are unique. We are not. We just happen to be among the few who survived. But all ancient cultures had this approach that the genius is not something that exists within you. That's a very egotistical thing to say. The genius is actually the blessing of the goddess, and your job is to be a channel to help that blessing flow through you. Right? If you see it from that perspective, then you have to treat that blessing with respect and just record what you see. That's how I am.
Yeah, Amitji, here you may not see me, invisible person on the top. Very small group sitting here.
Oh, you're on the top. Oh.
Namaste. Thank you for all the wonderful. I'm seeing a Valmiki in front of me with so much of.
No. That's. You shouldn't even say that. It's a part to
you are a Shishya of Valmiki. My name is Author Tripathi. I'm a Bharatiya from Karnataka, Kannada. So just wanted to check with you, because you have so much of knowledge that I can take to the younger generation who are here in this country. How can we take effectively all these things which are from Ramayana, that they don't get directly watching from just TV or having some books? For example, some of the things that you're saying, Ravan's son, Meghdutta, he's a source scholar. There's so many things which. How do we connect this with, first of all, as a parents? I also, learning. Along with that, I want to give it to all the youngsters. My son, who's 12 years, like that, all the kids. Is there a way how we can make it more dramatically, bringing these unknown Ramayana characters? Any suggestions?
No, good question. One of the easiest ways is, of course, my books. Again, that's another soft marketing. But that's not the only thing. A thing that strikes me is we don't spend enough time actually reading and understanding our ancient texts. And it's not just the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. The way I don't expect it to be different in the UK, but even in India, we are not taught our own traditions, our own literature. Sit, please. Okay. So even in plays, for example, we will read Shakespeare. Nothing wrong with Shakespeare, but we don't read Kalidasa, we don't read Bhasa, we don't read Tiruvalluvar, we don't read Galid. Right? It's not taught in India. In mathematics, in so many other subjects, we don't actually learn our own way. And there are very few cultures or countries which are so desperate to deny their own heritage and knowledge. You go to Greece, the first thing they'll do is teach you Greek stuff, and then they might teach you other stuff, right? If you go to the US, it appears like history actually began in the 17th century, right? But it's not wrong. I mean, you should learn your own culture first. Of course, learn other cultures too, but first learn your own culture. A simple thing like looking at a map. I don't know how many of you have noticed this. You go to any country, if there's a printed map in a government office, you'll usually find that the country that you're in will be in the center of that map. You see a map in the UK, the UK will be in the center and the rest of the world around it. You go see a map in the US, a printed map, the Mercator map. You'll see North America, South America in the US in the center and the rest of the world around it. Same with Australia, China. You go to an Indian government office, you see a printed map. Guess which country is in the center? UK. I'm serious, I kid you not. It's UK in the center. Okay. How many of you studied in India? Yeah? Okay. Very good number. What were you taught in school? How many seasons are there in summer, autumn, winter, spring? Yeah? In the second standard, I'd raise my hand and ask the question, man, monsoon kahan gaya? Okay. Europe, UK has 4 seasons. India actually has 6 seasons. Okay. And something as basic as this, they don't teach to us. So the problem is much bigger than just the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. I think there is almost no culture in history, and it should be in our own traditions out here as well. How much do we teach our children? And we think the world will come and teach them. No, the families have to have that responsibility. I see children here and in in India where if they are speaking about Ramayana, they actually ask, who is Lord Dashrath? You don't know where to begin, and you can't blame the kid. It's not his or her fault, right? So we need to reconnect to our culture, and I'm not a xenophobe. We must learn other cultures, but first we must learn our own, and we must do that in our own education system. In India, but we can do it in the UK too. UK is actually a liberal country. It allows different communities to have their own boards. What's stopping us from doing that and teaching our own culture? Without teaching, and it's not our way in any case, without teaching hatred for anyone else. But let's teach our own stuff. Only then will children actually get reconnected. And this to me is very, very critical. If we become wealthy, there are countries in Asia which have become wealthy, but they've actually lost their cultural mores. And you see the problems those societies are facing. And that's the end goal if we don't course correct now. It's very critical to course correct.
I tried something with...
Thank you. You can reconnect with Amish later. Vijay Rana ji,
Yes, Amish, thank you very much. Always profound and interesting. My question is, how has the class called Meghalaya Putras, liberal, left, seculars, Indian, anglicized Indian, how they have reacted to your body of work, which is profoundly Hindu-centric? Have you faced that crossfire?
You see, actually, in some of the the people who kind of supported my books, they would probably be called elite, anglicized elite, perhaps. One of the things I've learned is there are Indians of different cultural backgrounds. There are some who are anglicized elite, there are some who are connected to our roots, the Dharti Putras, there are people from different parts. They may have different outlooks, but I think the love for India is one thing that's common among all of them. Their expression of that love may be different. Now, are there some within each group who maybe don't love India? Yes, there are. Is that a description of the entire group? Probably not true. And the way I see it, often we experience the world that we want to see. If you actually see those who are connected and who want to find a way to connect, you will actually connect with them. So I speak at a Jaipur Lit Fest also, I speak at a Pondicherry Lit Fest also. On my book, I'll have endorsements from all sides. I think if we actually approach it from that perspective, we can find a common ground. And it's so critical for us. India is at a very critical phase, in my mind. It's next in 15 years. We are really in a good place. If we economically, geopolitically, if we can actually manage this, for the next 10, 15 years, we can be back to where we were 1,000 years ago. But There's this British historian called Niall Ferguson. I don't know how many of you have read it. Yeah. Niall Ferguson is a scholar, and there are obviously things I wouldn't follow what he says. He's a defender of the British Raj, for example. I can understand how it was good for the UK. It wasn't really good for India, right? But I always like to read people whose views may be different from mine, particularly if they're scholarly, because you learn from it. Niall Ferguson had written this book, Empire, and he'd written of this magic phase of the UK in the 1770s and 1780s. It's when they were fighting battles across the world. It's when they lost the US, but gained many other places. They were facing a lot of internal troubles. And his theory is that's when the UK earned the right to become a superpower. Nobody is going to make us a great nation out of charity. We have to earn it. And for us to do that, we have to remain focused for the next 10-15 years, and we have to make sure all of us pull together. Any process of change, will bring out some poison. It's the very nature of change, right? Anyone knows the myth of the Sagar Manthan, the legend of the Sagar Manthan, the churning of the ocean? It's metaphorical. For those who are not Indians, who don't know, the story is that the gods, Devas and the Asuras, they churned the ocean. Okay, it's a legend. Okay, so they churned the ocean on a mountain and a massive snake, Vasuki, and they got various goodies out of that, which actually helped the world, Amrit, nectar, etc. But at the beginning, poison came out, right? Halahal came out. And that story is actually metaphorical. Any churning is a process of change. India is changing so rapidly. It's changed so much in the last 25 years. It's going to change even more rapidly over the next 15 years. Just 30 years ago, India's GDP was smaller than the gross turnover of General Motors and Ford Motors combined. We were that poor a country. Just two companies had a bigger turnover than India's GDP. Today, we are the 5th largest economy in the world. Look at the pace of change, right? We pulled nearly 400 million people out of poverty. And the pace of change will be even faster over the next 15 years. Any pace of change like this, some poison will emerge. Right? It's the very nature of change. So I always request this for at least those of us who are Lord Shiva worshippers. Because remember in that Sagar Manthan, Lord Shiva drank up that poison so that it won't hurt anyone else. Right? So at least those of us who are Shiva worshippers, drink up that poison. Don't add to dissonance within society. If you see dissonance, try your best to remove it, because this next 10-15 years is very critical for India. If we can get it right, like the UK did in the 1770s, 1780s, we can earn the right to be back to where we were.
We'll just take one last question. I'm going to be partial to a woman being a woman.
Hi, I'm Samita.
Hi.
And it's really nice to see you here. This is my first ever book launch event and...
First ever book launch event?
Yeah,
wow.
Book, not launch, but yeah.
Oh wow.
Book event, yeah. First ever. I'm very, very excited to be here. So my journey of learning and getting into this all learning of Ram, Sita, it's very limited to what was shown in Ramayana of B.R. Chopra, Raman and Sagar, Mahabharata and all. So if I wish to learn, because you talked about Adbhut Ramayana and Valmiki Ramayana, and there are so many sources of or books to read, where do you end? And what is your source of truth that you would suggest us to the people who are actually beginning their journey?
Very good question. And that's the way it works in the dharmic way, the dharmic religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism. It's a different approach. I'm not saying any approach is better or worse from the Abrahamic approach. In the dharmic approach, you're not told a path. You're given a full. It's not like one book. It's an entire library. And yeah, and you find your own path. It's like if you explore a website, you are interested in a particular subject, right? And you go to a website on that, and you will see a hypertext. You find some sub-subject which is more interesting. You click on that hypertext and you go into that sub-subject. Someone else could find another path, right? And there is no one path that's right or wrong. You find the path that works for you, right? But what is the first standard? Where do you begin? That's normally the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. That's where we usually begin. But once you read that, and now there are good translations available. Both Valmiki Ramayana and the Mahabharata, they're very good translations. Vivek Debroy has done a translation, Chinmaya Mission has done a translation. There are various translations like this. Read them, and you'll find many of them refer to other stories. Many of them refer to other philosophies. They'll quote other scriptures. You'll find something that appeals to you. Whatever appeals to you, pick up that book. Okay, and read that. You'll find your own path. You'll find the path that works for you. Because in the dharmic way, it's an entire library. It's not one book. It's not like a set of rules to follow. So, in some ways, it's a little challenging because no one will tell you what to do. But in some ways, it's extremely inspiring. You are the master of your fate. You decide. But start with the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. That's usually the first step. And then you will get your path. You will get your path. Okay? All right.
Vivek? Will you like to take one last question? So the last question from Vivek.
So India is probably known for two Mahakavyas, right? One is Ramayana and another was Mahabharata. Probably with your 10th book, you're done with Ramayana. War on Lanka is the end. When are you going to see retelling of Mahabharata?
I will certainly get to that, and I will do a launch at Bhavan's for that too. Thank you.
So on that positive note, we are going to be now closing our question and answer session. Thank you, Amish, for patiently answering so many questions and sharing very.
Before we finish, if I can thank a few people. First, Maduresh ji, who is the chief person who organized it. You can have a loud round of applause for him. And Nanda ji, who kindly allowed us to use the Bhavans. In my opinion, one of the nicest men and the most knowledgeable men I've ever met. Thank you. Thank you so much, Nanda ji. Loud round of applause for him. And my comrade at arms, my partner in crime, Sanjay Sharma, my deputy director of the Nehru Center is here. He runs most of the Nehru Center. I'm the master. And if you can please have a loudest round of applause for my sister Bhavna ji and my wife Shivani out there.
I would now hand over to my colleagues Sudhir ji and Rahul ji to take over. And again, thank you, Amish ji. Thank you, everyone.
धन्यवाद श्वेता जी. अमीश जी प्लीज ना. अमीश जी आपसे रिक्वेस्ट करूँगा आप थोड़ा सो हमारे कुछ ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस those who have supported us this event, so would like to have a group photograph with you. So I'm going to call the organizations which have come as a group. So we are running late, so I will request that you please come fast, and let's have a photograph from our official photographer. So I would like to start with the women first, yeah. So inspiring Indian women, please give a big round of applause to them. Led by Srimati Rashmi Mishra ji. So Inspiring India Women Group was created in 2016, connecting Indian women from all around the world. Their vision is to create one healthy platform for members to share their success stories, motivate one another, and promote Indian culture across the globe. Please. Now may I request Sanatan Sastha of UK to be ready, please. Followed by Sri Jagannath Society.
किधर मिलेगा आपको? हाँ किधर मिलेगा? रिकॉर्डिंग तो यूट्यूब में.
Spread the knowledge of the Vedic culture to all. Sanatan Sanstha UK felicitate the Sanatan-based community events and multiple learning workshops in London and across the UK to connect with the Indian diaspora and others who are inclined towards the Sanatan Dharma and resonate with its ancient wisdom. The Jagannath Society UK is trying to build a grand Jagannath temple in London to spread Jagannath and Sanatan culture in UK and Arab. Oh, such a small team. Karadina Anivasi Hindu Gala Kotu is a Kannada. Now the UPICA, the next is Uttar Pradesh Cultural Association. I think this is the largest group representing today. Maybe it's to connect with Amish Tripathi because he is from Banaras. So maybe that could be the reason. Anyway, so just to manage that number of people, I'm asking Ashwani ji to please separate in two groups. Yeah, please. Uttar Pradesh is spread in different parts of the United Kingdom that brings them together as a close-knit extended family while providing a platform for its members to share their common culture, celebrate festivals, organize cultural events and social welfare programs. UPICA.
मेरा मौसा जी
अच्छा
ससुर मौसा जी
अच्छा
जी मैं पकड़ थैंक यू
नहीं आप
Friends of Madhya Pradesh UK. So FOMP is a living bridge between Madhya Pradesh and the UK. FOMP is officially recognized for government of MP under the NRI Department of Madhya Pradesh. Together. Hitesh Gupta ji, can you please get your team together? ID UK. Then followed by Bengali Hindu Aadhar Sangh UK. ID UK is a group of committed and experienced enthusiasts to promote Indian cultural heritage in the UK and create a fundamental support system for the community in every way possible, envisioning a presence across the UK in the future. Bengali Hindu Aadhar Sangh, please. I would request Darpan as well to please. Darpan, then Himachali Link. Just bear with us for 5 minutes. We're finishing. Himachali Link. Himachali Link aims to integrate culture.
आपको अभी 2024 का इलेक्शन आने वाला है तो अभी बहुत काम कराएंगे
Request योग फाउंडेशन टू बी रेडी. आप सभी लोगों से अनुरोध है कि कृपया थोड़ी देर के लिए अपनी अपनी सीट ग्रहण करें. कृपया मैं आभारी रहूंगा आपका. योग फाउंडेशन ने
योग फाउंडेशन
योग फाउंडेशन भवन जी
ये हमारे
ठीक है कोई नहीं. शरण्य जी बिहार एसोसिएशन आ रहा है, संभाल लीजिएगा.
योग फाउंडेशन. योग Foundation is based in Bexley, seeks to bring the local British Hindus and wider Bexley communities together to improve community cohesion and inclusivity, serve the vulnerable, celebrate diversity and improve the mental, physical and spiritual well-being for all. Bhavan Pathak ji and